I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1777 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. And on this podcast episode, I have another Vietnam veteran who is on here with me. His name is Ron Irwin. He was a U.S. Marine, spent some time in Chu Lai over in Vietnam. More than likely, all you guys who were up in I Corps know about Chu Lai. Ron has an incredible story to tell, and he typifies what I always say, the Vietnam veteran generation is as great as any that ever heeded the call of duty from its country, and Ron Irwin typifies that. He is an excellent representative of that generation, and after you hear his story, I'm sure you will agree. He's doing something so exciting and so special. I'm going to wait and let him tell you about it. But I'm sure you're going to want to help him make this thing happen. So, Ron Irwin, welcome to the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast.
Mac, it's great being here. I love it.
Well, we're glad you're here, and I can't wait for everyone to hear your story. And as we always do when Vietnam veterans get together, they always ask the 3W questions. When were you there? Who were you with? And what did you do over there? If you could start it out, tell us about that. I know you said you were spending a little time in Chu Lai, but go ahead and tell us what you did and everything.
Okay, well, yeah, I ended up in Chu Lai. First of all, I didn't know when the plane landed in Da Nang where I was going to go because we didn't know until we got there. So we went through the usual drill of being handed, 100 rounds of 7.62 millimeter, 782 gear, 6 frag grenades, a helmet. And all at once, you're beginning to realize this is not a vacation. And it really begins to sink in. And then they start calling out names, tell you where you go. And that's when I found out I was going to go to Chu Lai, which was like, do I have a choice? No, get on a plane. So, that's where I went, Chu Lai, Vietnam. That's where I was. When was 1966 to 1967, 13 glorious months. And who was I with for the most part? Marine Aircraft Group 12.
So you were involved in keeping the aircraft flying. And which aircraft did you work on?
No, actually, I was more like a briefer, debriefer kind of guy.
That's interesting.
I actually was supposed to go to Pensacola, but thanks to a Navy doctor who didn't know much, he didn't think my eyesight was good enough. So I went out and got a civilian's pilot's license and passed first-class medical without glasses every year, but it's okay.
I'm sure it's the same in the Marines, but they have the military intelligence, and in the Army, they always call that a oxymoron.
Oxymoron, yeah.
I mean, the guy can fly, he's got good vision, but no, he's not good enough to fly in the Marines. But anyway, you were close to the aircraft anyway then, there in Chu Lai?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, one day, which is another story we'll get to a little later maybe, I actually got to fly. The colonel would not give me the keys to the Phantoms, but I got to fly an O-1E Bird Dog, whatever.
So you were working on those. Now, you told me something. I've got to throw this in. You told me something earlier that right at the end of your tour, you had a beer with the 2 Viet Cong soldiers. What happened there?
Actually, they were NVA, and if you really want to jump ahead that much, I will. Yeah, after 13 wonderful months in Chu Lai, not all of them in Chu Lai. I'll give you some great examples of the total absence of military intelligence. On 3 days left, this is what we used to call really short. And I was sent to go pick up a Marine Corps general, which is pretty heady stuff when you're a corporal. Anyhow, so I go pick up this general, and 3 days left, I'm feeling a little what they call salty. Like, so what? So I said, General, with all due respect, sir, could I ask you one question and get an honest answer? He says, certainly, Marine, what is it? why are we here? And he thought for a moment. He said, I don't know. And that was like being hit with a bucket of ice water.
Reality set in.
I'm like, what the fungu am I doing here for 13 months? And now you tell me, General, that you don't know? So the next day, they send me up to Da Nang to deliver something, probably a Playboy magazine. I don't know what the hell it was. But anyhow, I had 8 hours before my return flight. And I was so fed up with the whole jet engines and the noise and the mortars and I was just done. I'm done. I want to go for a long walk. I had my usual 80, 100 rounds of ammo, my 6 FAG grenades, my M14, my 45 ACP. Nobody's going to stop me. And I was right. They didn't. So I just walked off the base and kept walking. I know where the hell I was. I didn't care. I was out in the rice paddies, and I'm walking. Suddenly I see a shack, and it says, with red paint, cold beer. And immediately I think, I have found Nirvana. So I walk up to the shack. There's a guy at the door. I said, you got cold beer? He said, cold beer, hot one, $5, package deal. I said, done. I am now sitting and enjoying my cold beer with my newly formed temporary bride. And about 300 yards away, I see a couple phantoms starting to drop napalm. That's too close. As I'm watching this, the Mensa brain kicks in and says, hey, if they're dropping napalm there, it's because the guys we call the bad guys are over there. And if they're over there, I'm sure they'd much rather be over here. And sure enough, right about then, here comes two with their AKs walking down the road in our direction. So I stand up and chamber around. And what do you think I did next? No, I told my friend, tell your buddies, put their guns down, come on in, I'll buy them each a beer. On the count of 3, they're going to meet Buddha. So she tells them, and they put their guns down. And I think she probably said in Vietnamese, you have a local American Marine with his gun pointed at you. Put your guns down. That's something, I don't know what she said. But they put them down, and they came in, and I bought them each a beer. And there we are. 2 NVA and me, sitting there having beer, checking out the girl, thinking this is what war should be.
Were they friendly?
Totally. I paid for the damn beer.
Yeah.
So, well, that was it. And then after one of the guys decided to take the little girl in a little back room, that was my signal that I probably would be in my best interest to leave. So I walked backwards down the Paddy Dyke for about a mile and then got home. And then like a year and a half later, I wake up one day and I said, hey, dummy, do you know how many different ways you should have been killed that way?
That's right. You were lucky that day. Of course, you had the short timer's attitude, so it really didn't matter.
I had the attitude of the general just told me he has no idea why we're here, so let's go have a beer.
with the NVA.
With whoever wanted to show
hell
up. I
with
didn't care. Hey, look, they were there for the same reason I was there. They wanted a cold beer and a hot girl. This is fine. We're on the same team.
That was a good story, but I know we could talk all day about what happened in Vietnam, but I'm so excited about what you did later in life. Would you just kind of give us a brief resume review of what you did afterwards, and then what you were doing out in California, or what you are doing out there?
Okay. Got home and eventually decided maybe it would be a good thing to go to college because actually I really didn't care about going to college, but I did want to go to law school. And oddly enough, law school requires that you have college. I don't know why, but they did. So I managed to learn enough about the system that I was able to get my first 90 hours. You only needed 90 hours in order to get to law school. I managed to get that all accomplished in 18 months. Then I went and applied to law school, and I went to my director of my poli-sci department and said, wait, isn't law political science? Well, of course. So my first year of law school, I can transfer back and get my diploma, right? Sure, why not? So I did. I went to law school. I learned the system really well.
That's what
happens. And I got my BA a year later, and then 2 years after that, I got my JD, and then I passed the bar exam, and I was a lawyer.
That's what happens when you're a man on a mission.
And my litigation experience was somewhat influenced by my Vietnam experience. There was no such thing as a compromise. The rest, the worst. I had several people that had been sued by me that when it was over would leave their attorney and come over to me and say, "Look, if I get in trouble again, can I hire you?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm not bragging. It was just what it was. It was my own psychotropic, whatever. But eventually I got kind of fed up with that, and I packed up my stuff and moved to California. Because why not? It was as far away as I could get from there without having to cross another country or an ocean.
There at the time you were practicing law in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in Chicago, basic Chicago area.
Okay. That must have been a big change going from Chicago out to sunny LA.
Well, yeah, in some ways, but I also had done I did a little TV work in the Chicago area. I actually was interviewed one time on a TV show in the same studio that was occupied by a woman by the name of Oprah Winfrey. I've heard of her. She's out here now, too.
Oh, yeah. So you hit LA, and then what happened?
Well, I decided it would be more fun to do radio, so I eventually got a talk radio show in the afternoon. And it was the beautiful part of it is the studio was on the Redondo Beach Pier. So I'd go down and do my work and then hang out on the pier and enjoy the fishing and all that stuff. And it was great. I was making good money. But my very first celebrity guest was Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson?
Yeah, that guy. But he was a lot younger, as we all were. And he had just come back from Australia where he'd done one of his big films. And we were, just talking. And it was a hoot. And then, I don't know, are you familiar with a soap star by the name of A. Martinez?
Oh, yes. I've heard of him.
Yeah, my wife one day is watching TV, and I watch it. She's like staring at the TV hard. And I said, who's that? It's A. Martinez. I said, you want to meet him? You can't do that. Well, I knew his publicist, so I called him up. And the next day, I took my wife to the studio, and he walked into the green room, and I said, hi. She almost fainted. It was hilarious.
Some people have all the luck.
It was fun. It was just fun.
You went into another phase of your career. Tell us about that. The PR.
Well, it was similar in a way. Yeah, the thing is, the problem is the station got sold to new owners who decided to do Korean language broadcasting, which is fine, but I don't know any Korean. And so I had to go. Then I decided, well, publicity is the way to go. And I been doing a lot of PR, helping people get known better. And there's no such thing as too much PR, by the way. But anyhow, that's pretty much what I've been doing. And then I also started writing some books and things.
Yeah, tell us about your writing and what you've done and your latest project.
I don't know. Latest project, because they're kind of silly. Well, the book that I think I want to talk about right now, because it really relates to Vietnam, of course, and that's 5150, the book.
Wait a minute. What kind of a title is 5150? What does that mean? Or where did that come from?
Well, one of the other things I did very briefly as a youth while I was in law school was I was a part-time cop. And 5150 is police code for crazy. Car 75, go to the corner of State and Lake, there's a 5150. It was a crazy person, so you go. And that's what it means. So I saw 5150. It's a 100% accurate description of my 13 months in Vietnam. Totally insane.
I think that applied to the whole war. You could say it was a 5150 war.
Well, yeah, in retrospect, I would totally agree. But at the time, my experiences were somewhat limited. And, so, 5150 the book. And honestly, you got to know this. The way this all happened was about 3 years ago, I went to the air show at Miramar. And I love air shows. And I went to the air show at Miramar. And all of us who were there were Vietnam vets were invited into a hangar. And the commanding officer gave us a little congratulatory welcome home speech. And we got a little pin. And it was all nice. And I walked out of the hangar. And I walk out and I see an airplane that the last time I had seen that airplane, not one like it, that airplane was in Chu Lai. They have VMA 225 on the tail, A4 Skyhawk. I just, in fact, even as I'm mentioning to you now, I'm feeling like ice in my veins. I was supposed to be going out of Vietnam after 3 months with that squadron back to Iwakuni, Japan. But that airplane, coupled with the fact that I had been in the hospital with dengue fever and malaria and then given an overdose of a psychotropic drug by an incompetent squid doctor, and I was taking it because I didn't know any better. We didn't have Google. And I was stoned out of my mind thanks to this doctor. Anyhow, I'm by the flight line, and that airplane, somebody accidentally trips off a 20 millimeter cannon, Everybody hits the deck except me. I start twirling around going, whee! At which point the commanding officer said, Irwin, you're not the kind of Marine I want in my unit. You're staying here. Okay. When I saw that plane, everything that I ever experienced in Vietnam came rushing back to my brain. I got home that night and started working on a book, and about 4 days later, it was done.
That was amazing. 4 days.
It was 24/7. I mean, it was just work, tap, 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 tap.
It sounds like an interesting book. Where's this book available?
You can get it on my website, ronirwin.net. You can get it at lulu.com. You can just Google it, 5150 the book. Unfortunately, Amazon is not carrying it for me. Dogs, what do they know?
Amazon won't carry your book?
I don't think I even tried.
Okay.
I don't know.
There are other ways a person could get this book by Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to put all these links you mentioned on the show notes for this podcast episode. So if you want a copy of this book, it sounds like it would be a good read. Go to the podcast website, episode 1777, and click on one of those links, and you can have it in no time and be reading it.
Can I just tell you one more thing about Vietnam?
Sure.
Because this is one of the things that just ate at me. I mean, I think everybody there, for the most part, was really there to a large extent to cover each other's back. You could be a PFC or a lieutenant colonel. It didn't matter. Bullets kill everybody. They don't care about rank. And everybody was kind of in it together. I mean, there was a definite team for the most part. There was always a few loon birds. But one day, we got some new equipment for our jets, for our aircraft, that allowed them to identify the difference between search radar and attack radar. I think you may know the difference. It has to do with pulse rate frequency. But in any event, it would have saved a lot of aircraft and a lot of pilots. But in order to get the equipment to work, the pilots all had to see about a 30-minute training film so they would know how to do and how to interpret what they were seeing and what they were hearing. So we had the film, but we didn't have a projector, and the Navy wouldn't give us the projector unless somebody with the proper rank and security clearance had a Navy projectionist license. You got to be kidding. This is like telling somebody today to get a DVD license.
Yes.
The only place I could get my Navy projectionist license was in Tokyo, Japan. So I'm sent up to Tokyo to get my Navy projectionist license while our pilots are still flying without this protection. And I walk into the classroom on a Monday morning, and in comes the salty old chief, and he just says, I understand two of you guys is from NAM. Who are you? So I raise my hand. Some sailor raises his hand. He says, Congratulations, Friday. Get out of here. So I had a week R&R, unplanned, in Tokyo.
They didn't teach you how to run the projector?
No need. He knew it.
That's what I was thinking. It must have been a real complicated projector. Don't you just put the film in it and turn it on?
Yeah, that's it. And, but the squids wouldn't give us this so that we could save lives in aircraft. I mean, it was just one of the many 5150 experiences that I had.
You're saying the whole book is filled with these experiences?
Yeah. Coming home from there, I had to go halfway back. I stopped in southern Japan in Iwakuni, which is a Marine Air Station. And I walk in to go check on to get on a flight going back to Da Nang. And the guy goes, Ron, if somebody I met from the States. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to Da Nang. He says, you don't want to go there. We're too overbooked right now. Take a few days off. I'll see if I can find you some space. They had one box of tampons going on the C-130. So, okay. Who might argue? So I went to Hiroshima, which is 20 miles away. You may have heard of that. We bombed them once.
Yes.
With a nuke. This was 21 years after that. I am not Japanese. And from my hairstyle, it was pretty clear I was probably military. I met a young band in this club, and they said, Ron, you got to come back tomorrow. And I'm like, sure. I come back the next day in Hiroshima, Japan, and there's at least 200 Japanese folks there to be entertained. And I find out it's singing contest night, and this band wants me to sing in front of 200 Japanese people in Hiroshima, Japan, as me, an American military guy. And I'm going to sing what? Marine Corps hymn, that ain't going to work. So I'm thinking I'm going to get out of this piano player being a Japanese guy. I'll never know this. I say, hey, can you play Home and Arrange? He starts playing. So I got to start singing. I sing Home on the Range. I won second place. I was fully expecting to get beer cans thrown at me, spit on, whatever. No.
You could become a recording artist.
No, that was fine. It was a lot of fun. Thank you very much. I'll leave now. Goodbye. But I mean, come on, seriously. That had nothing to do with Vietnam per se, but it was all a function of the Navy making me go up to Tokyo for a course I never had to take to get a license I never really needed, so that we could help save lives.
Sounds a lot like what they call military intelligence, or lack of it.
Yeah, it was right on. Yeah.
Something else I'm very excited to hear about, only because I've already had a preview of this. You tell me you're going to try and make a movie out of this book. Tell us about that and that project and what's involved in something like that, because most of us don't have the benefit of living in Burbank, California, and rubbing shoulders with Mel Gibson and people like that. So how are you doing it?
Unfortunately, I don't think Mel's going to be involved with this, but I got a guy by the name of Richard Greenwood, who's a multi-award-winning producer-director on board. I got a guy by the name of Kirk Taylor, who's somewhat of a buddy. You may have known Kirk Taylor was in a little movie called Full Metal Jacket.
Yes.
So at least, that was filmed, by the way, in England, not Vietnam. But in any event, that's showbiz. He's on board with us, and we're trying to get together some other people of that stature. And yes, we're trying to make a movie, and the process involved is we want to make what they call like a teaser first, short little 8 or 10 minute, to kind of give the general taste of what the film would look like, along, of course, with written proposals and script and all that, in order to entice somebody that has $25 million budget to make a real movie out of it. So it's one step at a time. And this is the step we're on right now, and we're trying to raise that money through GoFundMe. And if anybody has an interest, you can go to GoFundMe.com and search for Ron Irwin, IRWIN, and you'll see it. And if you like what you see, feel free to make a contribution. And by the way, depending on the level of contribution, you can get things like a copy of the book. But the effort here, because I think the story needs to be told. I think people need to be, not just because Vietnam, I don't pretend, by the way, to be any kind of a war hero. I'm a survivor, but I don't pretend to be a hero. But I think the idea that, people have to understand what really happens. Today, it might be in Iraq. It might be someplace in Africa you never heard of. But there's stuff that's still going on all over the world, and it has involved young men and women now who put themselves at risk on behalf of our government to help keep this country alive and well.
So you're giving all your fellow Vietnam veterans and others the opportunity to take part in this movie project, which hopefully will save lives, in addition to being entertaining. Is that the case?
I do believe that's a very fair, accurate statement, yes.
All right. Everybody listening to this, you have your marching orders. Go to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com, episode 1777. There will be all these links in there where you can buy his book and the GoFundMe page. And you're saying if people make substantial contributions, they get special, favors?
Yeah, I don't know exactly everything. I mean, we're still building the page. But for sure, I think it's $50. You get a book. If it's a couple $100, you get something else. I don't know, flak jacket. I really don't know. I'm not.
Or maybe even they could come on the set while they're filming the movie.
Oh, we could make that happen, sure.
I just thought of a question. Who's going to play you in the movie?
Oh, certainly not me. I'm a tad too old.
Have you gotten
that far yet? We have a young gentleman we're talking to right now who actually has got good experience, having done some TV work, and he's got great credentials. So we're negotiating with him. We see if we can get him on board. I think we will.
Okay, everybody, you have your marching orders. I'm going to end the podcast here. I want to thank you, Ron, for coming on and telling us this story, not only about your life experiences in Vietnam and afterwards, but also about this project you're doing. And I was thinking, if you've got a book of all the things that you were associated with in Vietnam where they were not doing them the way they should be done, I think it's a story that should be told. And I'm really encouraging everyone out there to contribute something. Even if you can't make it $100 or $10,000 would be great. Or if you want to write a check for $35,000, go ahead and they'll get started. But It all adds up. $5, $10, $20. It adds
We
up.
appreciate
And-
all the support in the world, even $5, because this is not about making money. This is about getting story told that needs to be told.
That's right. We need to know our history so we don't repeat it again in the future. And Vietnam is not another chapter of our history that we want to repeat. We do not need any more black marble monuments in Washington with 58,276 names on it. So we've got to get this movie made.
Well,
So, Ron, thank you so much for coming on. And matter of fact, I would appreciate it if you would return sometime as you go through this process. And if you have interesting news about your progress on this movie, we would love to hear more about it. So you're welcome to come back anytime.
I'd love to. No problem.
Thank you very much, Ron. We appreciate it. And you are welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you, sir.
That was Vietnam veteran Ron Irwin's story about not only his time in Vietnam, his life afterwards, the books he's written, and his movie project. I am encouraging everybody listening to this to go over to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com, episode 1777, and order a copy of his book, 5150. After hearing Ron talk about his experiences over there, I think his book would be very interesting to read and also tell us some things that need to be told about what went on over there in Vietnam. Also over there, you will find a link to his GoFundMe page. He needs to raise $35,000 to create a 4 to 5 minute intro video and all the other paperwork things that go along with getting a movie started so we can get this movie told. He is offering some very interesting things to people who make contributions to the project. All those gifts that he is offering will be on his GoFundMe page. Go over there and buy his book, contribute to his fund, and help him out in this noble mission that he has taken upon himself. That will do us all some good. If you do that, I guarantee you it'll make you feel better. In these times, you need something to help make you feel better, and this is the very thing to do it. So go on over and help make it happen. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1777 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?